What's up, guys? Today we're going to animate some burning fire. As you can see, I've drawn a smoldering torch here, and all I need to do now is start the flame artwork, and then we're also going to do some particle layers to make it look like the little bits of fire, just so we have a more realistic particle looking animation. So let's get our fire image. I'm going to trace an image for this. Actually, I'm not going to trace, but I do want to use these images for reference. I got two images here. One is this sort of more realistic looking flame, and one is a more cartoony flame, but it gives you a good idea of how the colors fade from the center of the flame toward the outside. The reason I want two different images here is because I want one to sort of give me the shape, the overall shape of what's going to come off of this torch, and then two, I want another reference for how I'm going to draw my particles. You can see how larger flames start, larger down toward the bottom, and then maybe they taper off as they get up higher. But we would like to have some sort of texture to our moving texture. That's why we're going to use particle layers for this. And I'm a little bit undecided on how I want this to shape up here. I'm debating at making a shaped flame that goes over the top of this torch, and then also having a particle layer behind the shaped flame that goes up a little bit beyond the shaped flame. But then there's the other idea that I'm thinking about, which is just making the whole thing a particle layer, and that would make it look very realistic, but it might be a little bit more cumbersome. So the shaped flame is going to be pretty quick with the particle layer, but I'm going to play around with both of them and see what looks better. Here we go. First things first, let's draw a shaped flame that sort of resembles this PNG file, this PNG image on the left. I'm going to go to my add point tool, my favorite. Let's add some color to these shapes here. And you know what I'm actually going to try to do is I'm going to try to put these shapes in a particle layer. I'd like to see if I can get them to dance in one spot as a particle layer, rather than animating all these points on the main timeline. Let's see if we can do that. So first thing I'm going to do is make these into shapes, and then I'm going to put them on separate layers, separate vector layers within a particle layer. Let's try that. Okay, so let's make 4 different layers for each of these flame shapes. Vector, we'll call this flame 1, flame 1. Let's just duplicate flame 2, flame 3, flame 4. Go back. All right, and then we'll go back to these, and I'm going to just put these on the various layers. Copy and paste. Oops. Get there. Copy. This will go on layer flame 2. And this, go back to the original. Let's grab this, and I'm just hitting G for grab and clicking the shape that I drew. Then Control C for copy. Going to the layer 3 and then paste. Go back to where I originally did this. Copy. Paste. All right, let's give them color. All right, let's reorder these layers so they're in the right order. Whoops. There we go. All right, looking pretty good. We need to put it in front of the torch, however. I'm going to hold shift and grab all these and move them in front of the torch. Cool. There's our flame so far. No animation, but we do have a flame. Let's delete this image. We've used what we need from it. So that is flame 2. We can take that off. And then we just have this. I'm going to change the opacity of all these flames to be probably 50%, but let's see how they look. Just double click on the layer, go to opacity, type in 50 or scale it down. I think you might even be able to do multiple layers at once. If you open up this layer window and then hold shift for the rest of the remaining layers, you might be able to edit them all at once. Not sure. Let's give it a try. Yep. Cool. So now you can see the smoldering part of the torch inside it. And we might even decrease the opacity a little bit more. See if we can do that. Maybe go down to, let's try 35. Apply. Maybe that's too much. Maybe not. I like it because you can see the smoldering. I'll think about that. But you can see the smoldering part of the torch behind it. And I do want to be able to see that. So that is pretty cool. All right, check this out. How about this? I moved layers 3 and 4 behind the torch, so you get a lot more view of the smoldering part of the torch. And then these background layers, they don't need to be in front of the torch. So let's go with that. Okay, I don't like the wideness of these flames, so I'm going to make them all a little bit more narrow. I'm going to select all these layers, flames 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then I believe I can scale them all. That looks better. I like the narrow better. All right, let's see if we can get these flames to dance. Let's add a particle layer. I'm going to call it particle 1, or we'll just call it flame 1 for particles. Flame 1. First, I'm just going to add flame 1 and 2 to it because I'm not sure how it's going to work with them being on either side of the torch. So let's just do flame 1 and flame 2. And as usual, when you select your particle layer, it starts off chaotically. So let's change the settings in the particle layer. Go into particles, move it down to 1 just to simplify things until we have it dancing how we want it. Lifetime frames is not going to be very long. Let's just start with 10 frames. Let's start with 0 velocity. Velocity spread. I'm just taking off everything to simplify it. Speed 0. Forgot. Acceleration 0. Apply. Alright, now I have it right where I want it. Alright, let's play with this and see if we can get how we want it. So you want to make sure that your flames originate where the particle layer originates. It makes it easier to animate. And if you press play, I have 3 particle count and then 3 review particle preview. And so it kind of gives us a little bit of a dance here. That's kind of what we want. We haven't really animated it yet, but that's sort of how we want them to be present. Okay, let's play around with how the flames are going to move themselves. Go back to flame 1. Frame 0. So the flames are going to grow. So let's just try scaling it first of all. So Shift or Alt gets it to scale in one place. Let's see how far off from the origin it goes. We want it to stay on the origin. Somewhere down there. Let's go to frame 12 maybe. And rescale. See what that looks like real quick. And we can adjust the speed on the timeline here. Let's do the same thing with flame 2. At frame 0. Oops, wrong button. Alt. And then you can scale it in one place. Bring it down to where the origin is. It's somewhere around right here. You can see that. Now press play. See? That's starting to look pretty cool. Oh, and I forgot to go to frame 12 for flame 2 to rescale. We're about there. All right, now go back to your particle, press play. Now we're getting somewhere. It's looking good. And one thing to note here is I do not want the flames to generate in different spots at all because it's coming from the same source on this torch when I move it back up here. I don't want them one to appear here and then one appear to a little bit to the left. So I changed the source width and the source height of my particle layer to 0. So they're going to generate in the exact same spot. And here's what it looks like. Pretty good. Now what I'd like to do is animate the tips of the flames so that there's some movement in the tips. Let's do that next. Okay, so going to flame 1, go back to frame 0. we can, you know, have the flame start a little bit, the tips start a little bit more central. Like that. Go to flame 12 and then they move a little bit. Maybe the curvature changes a little bit. And something else I'm considering as I watch this animation, this yellow flame is the center of the flame, so that's where the fire really is being generated. So I might want that to be a little bit more sustained. So I may copy this layer in the particle layer. So flame 1, if I duplicate that, go back to frame 0, duplicate that, then we can have a little bit more density. Okay, so we have a little bit more density with these two layers now. But I would like them to do different things. So let me go to the duplicated layer and change the tips on that. Go back to the particle layer, see how it looks. That's good. It gives us a little bit of variety on what's happening. Okay, let's move this particle layer, the origin, over the torch now. Layer. Put it right here where we want it. Now you press play. This is looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do is the same thing. I might want those flames to grow even a little bit more, which is easy. You just go to the layers within your particle layer and just adjust the scale or animate the points. So I'm going to do that to make them a little bit bigger. And then I'm going to repeat the same process with the flames in the background. I will have to put those in a separate particle layer since they're on the other side of the torch, which is fine. Okay, adjusted the size of those front 3 flames on the first particle layer. Here's how it looks. Looking pretty good. So now I'm going to go do the back 2 flames. Oh, and one thing I did do here is I did want these to look like they were burning a little bit slower. So let me get this moving back down. So all I did was I changed the length of time. So I changed on the particle layer, I changed the lifetime frames to 16 so they burn a little bit longer, and then I slowed the animation down for each of those flames in the front. So they go over 16 frames now, and here's what it looks like. Oops, hold on. Select the particle layer. So now they're burning just a little bit slower, and I like that better. If we do some finer particles like I'm going to do with this flame, I may or may not, but if we do them, these will move a little bit, they'll flicker a little faster at the top. Okay, and here's the back 2 flames after doing the same process on the back 2. It's looking pretty good. If you add in the other flames, there's my burning torch. And depending on the type of animation you're doing, this might be just fine. You might not need to go any further than this, but I think I'd like to try to add some sparks to give it a little more realistic particles. Okay, so I'm going to start by adding a layer. And I'll just call this Flame 1 again. It'll be a part of a different particle though. Flame 1. And I'll start drawing some shapes. Like always, I like the polyline tool. The add. So we're going to make some sparks. We'll try to copy some sort of these micro flames, and we'll put them inside this animation that we have here. And actually, I think I will just start with a regular shape, maybe just a circle, because these parts of the flame are going to be very fine particles. They're going to be sparks, if anything, or they might be just little tiny flames. So I'm going to just come in here, draw a circle, maybe get a different color here, something sparkish. That looks good. I'm not going to do the stroke here. Don't have the stroke. So just draw a circle here. I'm just going to kind of mock this flame a little bit, just a portion of it. And I want it to be small. I don't want it to be a big particle. Something that will turn into a spark. You can see that. So nothing big, but something that just sort of mimics this little wave of a flame here. Let's try that, and let's build our particles using that, and we can modify it, make it a little bit different, use a couple of them. but we may only need one particle layer for this. Let's try it out. And let's take the shape and copy and paste it a few times. I'm going to add my particle layer. Put this flame inside it. So now we're going to have all these particles. Oh, look at where they went. Okay, so that's fine. Our origin is right here for the particle layer. You can see right here. We want to move that to the flame, and we want it to be higher because the sparks are going to come up here on the flame. So if we move that particle layer, just move the entire layer so that the origin is somewhere up here. Now, I'm going to take all these shapes and put them where the origin is, over here. So the origin matches, the origin of the particle layer matches the origin of the other layer. All right, now we need to adjust our particles, because if we press play, oh, actually that looks kind of cool, but it's not a flame, so it's not popcorn. All right, let's see if we can get it to look more realistic. Let's open up the particle layer. Okay, here's our particle layer window. So basically, we want these to rise up almost like smoke does. But let's reduce the particle count, 20 for now. Am I in the right layer? Yeah. Okay. And then we don't want them to fall, right? So no acceleration. If I go to 0, apply. Now they're floating straight up. That's what we want. Obviously not at that speed, so we can reduce the velocity here. Velocity maybe down to 1, maybe less than 1. Let's start maybe 0.5 velocity. Apply. Now we're getting somewhere. Look at that. And they're starting a little bit slow on the bottom though. So if we reduce the velocity spread to 0.1, that will help us a little bit out there. Now we're starting to look like some sparks going up in the air. I would like this the origination of this layer to be a little wider. So let's go to the source width and increase that. 60. Okay. Might be too wide, a little bit too wide. Let's try 0.35. I think that'll be just right. Yeah. From a distance, that flame looks really good, really cool. Let's put some transparency on these shapes. You know what, let's actually animate the transparency. Okay, so if I go to the animation at the beginning here for this flame 1, I didn't actually animate anything. So we actually want these to start really small. So let's do that. Let's get them, we want them to shrink is what I mean, over, what did we say? Was it 16 frames? Oh, 24 frames. So let's go 24. And we're going to reduce them down to almost nothing. They're going to become almost nothing. Before they disappear. The other thing too is we'll change if we select the shapes, let's change the opacity of the fill. So by the time they get to here, the fill is going to be nothing. Yep, okay. Now let's see how they look. Sweet. And I think for one last final touch, I think the opacity of these shapes might do better if it's a little more subtle from the beginning. So if we go back to our flame one in this, in those fine, with those fine flames, I think it might actually be nice to be at maybe 50%, maybe not that far. but maybe somewhere around like 60. The alpha. All right, let's give that a go. And that looks great. It's a little more subtle. It gives it a little more realistic feeling, I think. That's a pretty cool flame. If you guys have any other ideas for animating flames and particles, go ahead and post your ideas in the comments. But subscribe, give it a like, and let me know what you liked about it. Thanks for watching. Take care.